Path of Exile 2, the Third Edict, was just fully revealed, and I was lucky enough to sit down for about an hour with Jonathan Rogers and fellow content creator Wudijo to talk to him about 0.3, all the massive changes within, and what the future looks like for Path of Exile 2. I hope you enjoy this interview. It was a little bit scuffed in an impromptu podcast, so I do not have Wudijo's video captured, but I do have his audio. As always, all timestamps are in the description below. If you'd like to see more interviews with Grinding Your Games, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the sub notification bell, and leave a comment. It really helps. I think this should be a good one. Wudijo and I bounce between questions as best as we can, and we both definitely have different vibes. Cannot wait to chat with Jonathan again. I hope the Third Edict goes extremely well. And yeah, we do talk a little bit about the Druid. Jonathan, so out of everything that we just saw, I think what excites me the most is Lineage support gems. Where where did the idea for that arise? Was that a relatively new concept, something you guys have thought about implementing a while back in Path of Exile 1, or did you just realize, hey, new cool idea, unique support gems, let's put it in PoE2?
So basically, the support gem stuff, like I would say in PoE2, hasn't been in a great place until now. And I mean, I did explain in the presentation effectively that like the limitation of one support per character just kind of wasn't like, there was something about it that was kind of like working against the other goals that we have, which is the thing with wanting people to use multiple skills. So effectively, we knew we needed to do something there. But it took a little while to kind of convince people that it would actually be okay to allow that. And like kind of as part of those discussions, we were talking about, okay, like what are the issues here? What, like the whole limit to one thing, not having progression, all that sort of stuff. At some point, we're like, you know what? Like it feels like we need more like going on with the progression of supports. Like, we talked about the levels and that was cool, but then we're like, wouldn't it be cool if there was just something, like towards in the late game where things really changed up, we could really change how things work. And yeah, that was where the kind of like, what if there were unique supports was kind of, the idea that we had. So as soon as we sort of thought of that, we're like, okay, it'll be cool. Like we're gonna theme all of them around like, hey, what would Lion Eye use if he had a support gem? Like that kind of stuff. Like we're thinking about those sort of lore things, and it obviously comes up with a lot of ideas like that. So I mean, it's been a fun one.
I'm a fan. I'll throw it to you, Woody,
Yeah,
if
I
you want to
also gotta
bounce.
say I really like the oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say I really like the idea of those lineage support gems. I think that's a very cool evolution of the system. Well, also, first of all, hello. I think we didn't have like an introduction during the recording, basically. So, as Jonathan said at the start, we're going to do like some impromptu podcast, basically. So, first of all, happy to be here. This is just me from the hotel room right now, so it's a bit scuffed setup. But anyway, I also had a question about those support gems. So, I remember originally you basically made this point about, okay, we restrict the use of support gems because like less is more, kind of like there is actually more combos and more things you can do, and now you're kind of like going back on that. And can you like maybe give a little bit more insight about your philosophy change there? So it was explained, okay, you can now invest into more skills, but I felt like it might also just lead to like everyone's just using the same gems everywhere. Is that like a fear you have, or how do you maybe perceive that now?
So that was exactly the fear that I have. The thing is that I guess two things changed. One of them is that I started to realize that the problem of people having feeling like they have to all in on one skill was actually a larger problem than what we were solving by having that restriction. And like especially when I was looking at things of like, okay, why wouldn't you use I don't know, like I can't remember what even the example I was using, but like there are lots of utility skills where it's like, why wouldn't you use this? And the answer often was, well, I mean, you would use this if you could support it with this and this and this, but you're not going to support it with this because you'd rather put it on this other skill. So utility skills were effectively always getting, gimped because they just didn't, you couldn't use martial tempo, you couldn't use like, various things to sort of get them to end game tier. And so then we're like, okay, like what is going to make it so that I actually use this? And like a lot of the conversations we're having, because one of the big problems we had is like skill diversity, and like, or I should say build diversity, trying to have it so that more builds are viable. And the question for every skill was like, well, why aren't you using this? Why aren't you using this? Right. And then like that became the answer for so many different skills that we're like, we have to do something about this. We just have to sort of improve it in some way. And then when I really looked at it, I'm like, okay, yep, we might get a problem where you're using some of these other things. But there is enough sort of differences in how skills work and like what's optimal for them that I think it will actually end up being okay. And then the lineage supports were also partly a response to this as well. So like, okay, what if we still have some really kind of interesting and different things that can like really push build diversity even further while making things more unique? And that's where the lineage stuff comes in. So the lineage supports do still have, by the way, because they're like, like supposed to be like uniques, they actually still have the restriction of one per character. But because they're kind of more special, they do like different stuff. They're kind of maintaining, they're carrying the flag for that, like, skills doing different things without like removing the sort of base, like, okay, you need to actually get a skill to a base level of goodness to be able to make it viable in endgame, which was a problem that we were running into quite a lot. And of course, now that we've got the multiple levels as well, you can push things further in some ways as well. So yeah, a lot of those things in terms of even the other ones that we're adding, right? Like a lot of utility skills are just going to come a lot better here. And so that was the primary goal of what we were doing.
Okay, can I follow up right now on this? So is it like more important for you guys that people use more of the active skills, and then it's okay that like you see like the same support gems used all the time, like martial tempo is an example. I see that being used like probably in like almost any warrior build, for example, just to like smooth out the animations, for example.
So I think it is okay, so long as it's not the case where every skill is like the exact same 5. Like if you've got 5 supports, but like at least 2 of them are doing something different on each skill, then I'm kind of okay with it, because like each skill still has its own flavor, even if you've got a couple of things that are duplicated. Now obviously we'll see how this goes, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be okay. Like there was a lot of fear around this, right? Like in the studio as well. Like when I first even pitched this, people were like, I don't know, isn't going to result in this? But I kind of eventually got across the idea that, like we're solving a bigger problem than what we're causing here. So I think it is important.
Okay. And I have another follow-up on that, if you're let me.
Go for it.
Okay. Which is about it's a bit of a different topic, but it ties into this, which is the weapon swapping and using especially 2 different weapon types for dealing damage. So this is something we have not really seen so far, and it seems like we're trying to push that a little bit with for example, the weapon swap speed. In fact, I have a unique design from the puzzle box that I wanted to really make something going towards in that direction, but I guess now I have to come up with
Now we're just
idea.
doing it. Yeah. So that one was another one. So it really also comes down again to trying to promote build diversity. So that one actually came out of the sorceress design that we were doing, because we were saying like, okay, what are all the barriers that are preventing people from wanting to use multi-element builds, right? And so like we were looking at every different single thing through the game that we could find, and like that was just another one on the list where we're like, okay, like this is one of the barriers we have to break down. Let's just do it. And like it's quite it can be a bit to get your head around doing the weapon swap stuff. So like you have to kind of encourage people quite a lot to even do it in the first place. So just removing every barrier we can to that is just going to improve things. So once again,
I think that's great. But the thing I would really like to see that I think is not really just there yet is actually using 2 completely different weapons, like a mace and a crossbow or something like that. Right. I feel like we have not really seen much of that. Okay, I can see like, the dual element stuff, like, a lightning and a fire setup or something like that. That is also something you showed, I think. And something going in that direction, or like
I'll tell you one important step in that direction. I'll tell you one important step in that direction is that we've lowered attribute requirements by 25%. And so that will actually mean that it's much more viable to use like off-class stuff, which is actually another quite a big change as well. So that one, of course, has the obvious effect people would see of like I can allocate more power on the passive tree. Obviously, that's the main one. But yeah, there was a goal there also of just like increasing the ability to do off-class stuff. So that's been another one I think that's quite subtle, but will contribute to that.
Okay, so just to be sure, the attribute requirement reduction is not just for the gems, but also for weapons.
Also for weapons and armor, yes. So it's just everything is 25%.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we only saw gems there, so I wasn't really sure.
Yeah,
so
but I should have shown an example of both, but yeah, it is everything.
Okay.
Nice. Any more follow-ups, Woody? Good.
It's fine. Just go ahead.
Good. I had one quick question on the gem limit. Does the Gemling Legionnaire get to use 2 lineage support gems?
I'm pretty sure that was what we did, but I think there was, you know what, we had a conversation about this and I can't remember where we landed. It was probably that. At one point I was proposing a slightly more insane change, which is that you could use 2 of the same gem in 1 skill gem, but I think that one was rejected pretty handily because it was way too powerful. I think it is that one, but I think we added more to those nodes as well. There were quite a lot of changes to Gemling Legionnaire nodes that I don't quite remember, and they didn't get covered in the presentation in the end. But yeah, there's actually like a huge amount of balance around ascendancy classes that you'll have to wait for the patch notes to see because there's like a lot of it kind of wasn't worth mentioning in the context of all the other changes that we're making. But yeah, there's a huge amount of balance. Like there's whole systems there that honestly it's kind of crazy. Like in a normal video we would have covered. Like we're changing the entire ignite system, stuff like that. There's just like stuff like that's going on. Like there's a lot there that like because of the amount of kind of cool stuff we wanted to show, we didn't have a chance to even talk about. But yeah, it's like definitely the biggest rebalance that we've probably ever done in Path of Exile history in terms of like changing so many things.
You
So
you
yeah,
took all
it's
those,
pretty big.
yeah, all those balance comments personally. That's what I thought. I just thought every
Sure.
single thing that, I mean, I've seen brought up in a lot of critique videos and the
Right.
community has brought up was addressed. Now I'm curious. This is like a philosophy question. It looks
Mhm.
like almost everything was buffed in that video. I'm just curious, how does the game feel right now? Do you feel substantially stronger? Is stuff melting faster? Are you moving faster through the game? Like, what's the overall feel at the company while you guys are playtesting
So
this?
what I would say about that is that what we're trying to do here is buff the stuff that people aren't using. Like, like 0 to 0, there was a huge amount of nerfs, like to all the stuff that was too powerful. Whereas here, it's kind of the opposite of that, where it's like a bunch of buffs to the stuff that's bad. And there are other types of buffs that affect everyone as well. Like you've got things like defenses and so on, and like it does make the game easier for sure for that reason. But the thing is, a lot of people were finding the game too hard anyway. I wouldn't say we've gone overboard in terms of making it like way easier. I think like it's probably in about the right place as far as that's concerned. But like yeah, it is definitely a much more sort of buff heavy story in 0 3. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't any nerfs at all. Like I know Lightning Spear is getting a nerf. Like I don't think anyone will be surprised to hear that. Like yeah, obviously, we just don't obviously dwell on those in the in the live stream. But yeah, generally speaking, there's a lot more going up than coming down with this launch. And so I think that people will probably enjoy that. But yeah, as I said, it's really about the stuff that's not being used, like making any kind of combinations that weren't working before now viable. And what that should mean, I hope, if we're doing our job right, is that like for a player who doesn't know what they're doing as much, if they just kind of pick semi-random things, then they're going to have a better time because of the sort of the buffing of the bad stuff that's going on. So I think that should be an overall improvement there. But obviously there's still a lot of balance to do, and probably one of the scariest things is the shake-up with the skill gems, right? Because like when you start screwing around with skill gems, like suddenly a whole bunch of builds you didn't expect can come out of the woodwork. So I'm sure we'll see some unexpected combinations there. But yeah, it should be a lot better than what 0 to 0 was in terms of the balance.
Everything seems to be tossed up. The skill gems, the passive skill tree, crafting is another one too. There
Right.
appears to be like a middle tier now to crafting, while you guys
Yep.
also introduced a ton more risk and heights at the end
Right.
too, with the new orbs
Mhm.
and with the abyssal
Mhm.
mods and everything. I think though, after watching that video, I think 90% of people are going to be playing unarmed because that looks so much. I'm not even kidding. That looked awesome. That was the first thing I thought, and I think that's what has latched into my mind. Just all the
Right.
possibilities and how it looked like you were like zipping around from monster to monster. I'm really excited for that. I'll throw it to you, Woody.
Yes. I can only echo that sentiment. I think people are going to be very excited. I think crafting was one of the biggest issues that
Mhm.
people have been bringing up all the time. And
Mhm.
for example, bringing back the second version of the Recombinator is definitely something really welcome because we actually get
Right.
an item back. I can't remember how often. I don't even know if I ever got an item back from the Recombinator, basically.
Right.
So there's that. But yeah, like there's also like I also have the concern a little bit, not to really like try to balance out the fun or something like that in that sense. But it seems really like we are going up in power a lot. Not just through the gem changes, but we also have like a much higher ceiling now with the items that we can make. Are you actually planning to extend, for example, the pinnacle challenges? We have like the tier 4 bosses and so on. Is that currently the kind of like the ceiling of what we can expect, or are you like maybe raising the power a little bit of the bosses or something like that?
We actually didn't want to raise the power at the top end too much. And the reason is because you've got this issue with build variety that you can get, where effectively, for someone to consider a build viable, it effectively has to be able to kill the hardest content in the game. So if the hardest content is too high of a bar to clear, it effectively means that very few builds can clear it. And so I think one of the problems that you have with build variety is that issue. So because of the way, like, I don't think that the top end power will change that much without as you get to like to where to the peak of the end game, because like a lot of this crafting stuff that's like really, really raising the bar, like the sanctification, all that sort of stuff. Like that stuff is pretty like hardcore. Like you're not just gonna walk into like 120% mods and that kind of stuff like very easily. So that's kind of really the like the ultra in game like super like crazy stuff that will get to the point of being able to just like destroy pinnacle bosses like that and that kind of stuff. So I don't know that like and at the same time, like the power increases aren't necessarily that much for the stuff that was already powerful. It's really all the stuff that was bad that's more powerful. So I'm hoping that more builds will clear the bar now. Like that is really my hope. Because like one of the big issues is definitely like people just saying there aren't any builds, nothing's viable. There's only, or you have to play Lightning Spear. Like all that stuff is just like the issue. So I really want to just put all that to bed and have that no longer be the problem anymore. Now, if we do get to the point of like people feel like they need an even like a bigger challenge, then we can look at that. But as I said, we have to be really careful because if we raise the bar too much for what is at the top, then yeah, less things will be viable. We'll kind of ruin build diversity again. We've actually been through a few cycles of this in PoE1 where we've kind of raised and lowered and kind of like and screwed around with this stuff to sort of get to the perfect point. So it might take a little while, but I think right now it's more important to just get more things viable. Like that's really what we want. Like get back to the story of like there are lots of options. You can do lots of things. So that's kind of that's priority right now.
Yeah, just to like follow up on that real quick, it's also like at least from my perspective and like from what I hear from many players, like especially on like the higher end of blasters or something, they also feel like they need something to do with such a powerful character, right? Like why do I invest my 200 hours and try to sanctify all my gear and try to get the 100% roll on the percent fizz affix and stuff like that. So
I mean that is definitely a concern. So like I guess like but it is actually very hard for us to know because here's the thing, like when we're testing the game, like in like a 4-month cycle, it would actually be impossible to really get many characters to the like peak of endgame. Like in reality, like sure you can cheat stuff, but it's never really quite the same. So there's quite a lot so realistically what I do when I'm testing changes is I'm kind of playing through the campaign and then like might play a few maps and then I'm kind of like onto my next character and doing stuff. So it's really hard for me to say exactly what the in-game experience is going to be exactly like, but in theory we've tried to tune it, like in terms of like the few nerfs we are doing to kind of get those like few builds that were just like completely obliterating everything, with zero challenge at all. We've tried to sort of take the edge off of those while, yeah, as I said, buffing all of the lower stuff. So I'm hoping that things are going to go well, but as I said, balance is like one of the hardest things to get right. And honestly, I think that we underestimated this part when it came to like predicting how long it would take to get out of early access because in order to get out of early access, we need two things, right? We need the campaign to be finished and we need people to be happy with how the balance of the game is. And it's like that part is like taking longer than we expected and taking more of the effort than we expected. So it's like, I like for that reason, I don't think that we're going to be able to get out of early access this year. We might have been able to get like the campaign done, but I don't know that we can, it's like maybe we'll luck out in 030. It's like every problem will be fixed and things will be perfect and then it will be fine. But I kind of have a feeling it's going to take at least one more iteration after this to get everything kind of to the right point. And we can't go out of early access until then. So yeah, there's quite a lot there that that needs to happen effectively. And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. But like what I'm hoping as well is that okay, like even and then this is the thing that you've observed, right? We have now answers to everything. They may not be the right answers, but at least we've got answers, right? Which means that we can then like people can see at least everything that people were unhappy about. We're trying to solve. Which I think is very important for people to feel, like they were actually like looking at all that stuff and improving it. As I said, might be more iterations, but we're very much focusing directly on the things that people are unhappy about right now.
I'm not sure, Tried, if you want to like jump in, but I had a question on the release as well, actually, so I can follow up on that as well.
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, you just kind of mentioned or confirmed that we're not going to get the full launch this year, which is something that you had as a goal.
I think it's very unlikely that we would. Yeah, I think it's very unlikely.
Okay, I'm not going to take it as confirmation just yet. Okay, but anyway, I guess that comes not really as a surprise, right? So we've seen where you just need more time for cooking, basically, and I guess most people just understand this is how it is. And like, do you have like kind of like, I don't know, like, do you feel like a pressure now to kind of get it out as early as possible because of what you said earlier, for example, or do I just like, okay, we're gonna take as long as it takes, and we're gonna release the game?
I felt a pressure from the very beginning, right? Like I don't want this to go on for years and years. Like I want it to, I want to get it to be to have a free to play game again, like get back into the normal cycle of making leagues and everything. Because like the development process during early access is pretty like it's hard, right? Like on the company and everything, right? Like trying to make acts at the same time as doing other changes, like it's a pretty big deal. Supporting PoE1 and PoE2, it's difficult. So I want to get that sorted so we can kind of get back into the rhythm again, and and sort of get everything going. So like I feel that pressure anyway. But obviously we're not going to leave early access if people are unhappy with how the game is. So we just have to we have to sort that out. Yeah, like that's what we'll do. We will take as long as it has to take, but I am really hoping it won't be that much further to get there.
You're waiting to add the
Okay,
Druid,
thank you.
and once you have the Druid, then you'll be out for early access.
Well, I mean, obviously the Druid's important, but so okay, we really thought we were going to have that this launch, like, and it would have been it's like if we'd have had that as well, it would have been so ridiculous in terms of the amount of stuff going on. But what happened was that the stuff for the existing characters, like we got to a point where we realized like if we're going to do all this stuff existing character balance, we aren't going to have enough time to finish the Druid, and we realized that was actually more important because adding a new class when you haven't fixed or answered at least so many of the problems that you had before is exactly what led to the problems that we had in 020. We added it, like we spent a bunch of time adding a class, we didn't spend enough time fixing existing stuff, and that meant effectively that we ran into the problems that we ran into. So we certainly didn't want to run into that again, and so even though we were trying to do both, we felt it was more important to get the existing stuff in a better state.
There are a lot of new toys to play with, so yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
don't
there
blame.
is a lot of new stuff there to do as well. So
Yeah, the notables, the new supports,
right.
all that stuff. Yeah, it looks pretty exciting. I'm curious to go back on Rudy's question, expanding on the release. What is your bar? You want the players to be happy. What are you primarily observing there? Are you looking at the diversity of what people are playing? Are you just looking at general sentiment on like Steam reviews or Reddit?
I
What are you guys
mean,
trying to measure there?
it's a little bit hard to quantify that exactly. Like, I mean, sure, Steam reviews are a thing, but I wouldn't exactly want to base everything on that because, there's various
Mm.
issues with that. Although I did notice today that they changed it so that Steam reviews now are language specific, so that a
Oh.
bunch of people review bombing you in like I shouldn't name a country in a specific country aren't going to cause like overall issues and stuff like that. So
Mm.
it's kind of interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, it really is just looking at the overall community sentiment. Like I would want certainly like people to generally feel like we know what we're doing, that we're like the game is in a good place, that skill diversity is good, that there's a lot of builds to play, that sort of overall it's a fun experience. That, and I suppose another one that's really important is that it's fun to play through the game again.
Mm.
Because that's obviously part of if you're going to run a live service game that's seasonal like ours is, it has to be the case that people are excited to play through the game again each time. So if we haven't proven that we can do that with PoE2, then obviously we're going to have a problem once we go into free to play. So that's kind of really important. We do need to get there too. But I wouldn't exactly say there's like, oh, here's some Steam review percent metric that once we hit that we're good or anything like that. Like it's not like that. It's just, it really is ultimately the vibe of like like are people trusting us? Are they happy with what's going on? Then we'll know that it's fine.
One follow-up, Woody, if that's all right.
Mhm.
Playing through the game again. So you've added 3
Mhm.
temporary acts to the game.
Mhm. Mhm.
Was that a that seems like a lot. Was what happened with Act 5? That's a lot of content. How do those feel
So we'll
playing
talk
through?
about
Like,
that.
did they have seeded area, like seeded drops? Did you put a lot into this, or is
All
it
right. Well,
kind of like
let's talk
maps,
about that.
leading up to it with a small story, like almost like a
Yeah,
mini
yeah, yeah.
league
So
story?
yeah, I'll talk about that. So effectively, the the first thing was is when we're going to add Act 4, we're like, well, how the hell are we actually going to do this? And we always knew this is going to be a problem, but it's like, okay, we add Act 4, we obviously can't make you play through all 4 acts again. That's like way too long. At the same time, we can't just have it in-game immediately after Act 4 either. You won't be the right level and it won't make sense. So then we're like, okay, what are we going to do? So there was like, obviously, oh, do you make people play through like Act 1 and 2 after that? Or like, it's kind of weird. Like, it doesn't really work. Like, not, there kind of wasn't really a good answer. It's like, okay, what does it really take to get you to end-game? What's it going to take to get you from the level you are at the end of Act 4 to 65? And we're like, it's going to take about 20 areas. And we're like, well, what is 20 areas? Well, I mean, so Act 5, that would have been enough. But getting Act 4 and Act 5 in at the same time could have been an option. But the issue with that is that like it would have just been a lot to make. And there's just a thing with game development where it's like people don't really finish something until they know it's going to be released. So like if we were working at the same time, it would have honestly, I felt like taken longer to get both of them out than doing them all than both individually. So then we're like, okay, so what can we do in the meantime? And so the answer was, let's make some like side stories where we're like, it's not going to be the same quality as like what a full act would actually be, but you can kind of look at them as like 3 kind of like quests. They're like, they've got some bosses, they've got areas, like, they're not storyline heavy. They do have like a story where there's like, some NPC. It'll be like 1 or 2 NPCs who talk to you. It's not like a whole town with like a bunch of stuff going on. It's like, a relatively minimal thing. We'll make content that we intend to make anyway for endgame. Like we'll make areas and we'll make bosses and stuff that we're going to use anyway for endgame. And then like the only part of that that's really going to get thrown away is just like the NPC dialogue stuff and like little storyline things, which isn't too much, like all of the actual art, like all the stuff that takes a long time to make, all that stuff we'll get to keep. And then we'll put that in game as well, so you won't really you won't really miss out on it. But it is canon stories, right? These actual things that is canon storyline things. So like you'll experience that and you'll get to see that. And it only has to hold up for like a few kind of for a league or two until we get Act 5. So yeah, effectively like that's kind of what we're talking. So there is some reuse, like sometimes we've taken a boss and done a reskin, changed the abilities, that kind of stuff. We've got a little bit of that going on. Some of them are like many of them are completely new. In some cases we've taken maps from the end game and we've turned it into a campaign area and like things like that. So there's kind of like a little bit of chop and changing and so on. So it certainly was a much faster thing to make than what a real act is. But I think it's going to be fun to play through. It's going to sort of be an enjoyable experience. And yeah, as I said, something to certainly much better than having to replay through Act 1 and 2 again. Like that's what we're looking at it compared to.
Wait, I'll make sure to scribe down the story. All right, Udi, over to you, man.
I mean, I'm sure it'll be in the wiki forever. So,
it's certainly a very interesting system with this kind of a temporary Act 5 and 6, and I guess let's see how it goes. But it definitely, I think a lot of people will really feel much more excited about starting again. So I think that was a good move with just doing away.
Well, I mean, the playthrough thing was certainly not helping with the whole games. I mean, like when we started this season, like the 4 months ago, we literally just like, okay, we put a big whiteboard up in Mark's office and we're like, let's write down every problem people have on the whiteboard. And like, not in terms of like, here's what we're fixing, in terms of just like, this is the problem, right? So like, top of the list was game as a slog, right? Like that was literally just right there. Like, what are we doing to address this? What if that's the thing people are saying, what's going to improve that? Well, it's like, well, for start, let's not make you play through the whole damn thing twice. That's like a like a really important thing. But there's also sprint was written under that, and like a bunch of other sort of speed improvements and stuff like that. We're like, okay, what's going to solve this? So yeah, like that's the way we were looking at how we were approaching the entire design process for this season. So
yeah, so I have another question which we're still loosely on the topic of releasing and the dates and stuff like that. So at some point in the past, you mentioned that you consider releasing 1.0 without all the classes in the game, and it looks more and more likely that this is what's going to happen now, right?
Yeah.
Do you have like maybe some sort of like, I don't know, final date in mind where it's like, okay, this is the maximum the time we want to spend until we have all the classes in the game or something like that? Is that something that you already keep in the back?
I'm honestly not sure, because the answer to that depends on how much like balance of existing stuff needs to happen. Like if we come out of 0.3.0 and like the balance is in a pretty good place, we might be in a situation where we can concentrate entirely on classes and then we can get them done like relatively quickly. But then if we come out and it's like, okay, there's still
like 3 at once, boom.
yeah. Then it's like okay, now we have to do a lot of things. Like, and there was quite a lot of half-finished stuff. Like, okay, I mean, there were like ascendancies and all sorts of stuff that we were going to have in this version. That a lot of work was done. Like a lot of stuff could happen pretty quickly if we don't have other balance problems to deal with. So yeah, it's just that it's one of those things where like new classes and existing classes, exactly the same resources need to be spent on them. So that's the challenge of balancing one to the other.
Speaking of ascendancies, is there like any kind of, let's say, learnings or like, I don't know, the change in philosophy, for example, how you develop the new ascendancies compared to what you had at launch, for example? For example, like making something more generalist versus specialized, or do you have like any sort of like change in that philosophy?
The philosophy has changed really. It's more just that we see that things aren't working, we're improving them. I mean, one of the things we try to do with the ascendancy classes and PoE2 in general is they've kind of got a lot more like skills and interesting mechanics like that going on. And even with the new ones we're designing, they're getting even more ridiculous as far as like coming up with stuff like that. Like some of the ascendancies have just such cool. Oh man,
come on, drop one.
I can't do it, but there's one of the new ones that's kind of impressive. So yeah, we just like to try and sort of up the bar on like the amount of stuff that goes into each one at this point. But yeah, at least for the existing ones, like we've made a lot of really good changes. Like we went through like a couple in that presentation, but there's like a ton more on like I'm not going to say every Ascendancy class, but there's certainly changes like all over the Ascendancy classes that, merging nodes. Like, so it's a pretty common thing that we've been doing is like, if there's 2 nodes where like they're both both underpowered, or maybe even sometimes when the 4-point node is good, but the 2-point node is bad, we'll just like merge the 4-point node down into the 2-point node so that you've got both and then add something new afterwards. Like this kind of thing is like a way to add power and then also something new without actually losing any of the functionality you had before. So there's like that's sort of going on in quite a few places in the Ascendancy classes now too. So yeah, like we'll just keep adding to them until we've got something where like every class is something people want to play, and like ultimately the goal there is just a relatively even flat amount of people playing each Ascendancy class. So hopefully we can achieve that relatively soon.
I suppose that also comes just down to like, I don't know, tastes and popularity of certain archetypes and stuff.
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that
you get that kind of thing as
right?
well. I mean, look, they don't have to be exactly even. They just have to be.
I would
at least,
hope
there's
that
still
you're not
usable.
just balancing for the numbers, right? And
right. Yeah.
But it does make sense the way you describe it. Do you have like maybe some sort of like, I don't know, the average power gain for an Ascendancy or for an Ascendancy point in mind? Is it like something that you balance around? Like this is the kind of expected value?
Yes,
even though
there
it's
is a
like
number
not
for that.
recyclable?
There is a number for that. I don't remember what that number is. Mark's and Andrew are the ones who normally do the balance versus that, but they have a very established system of like, here's what each mechanic is supposed to be represent in terms of power. Like I don't know exactly what the number is for Ascendancy classes points, but it might be something like 20% or something like that of character power from the when you ascend. I don't know if that's the actual number, but it's something along those lines, and they'll know that, and so that's what they're trying to balance towards. And like establishing those metrics is something that they've put quite a lot of time into, is like making sure. And so that was also something at the end of when we went into 0.1, I don't think we had as good of an idea about where all those things needed to be. Like we had obviously a bunch of experience with PoE1 in this regard, but PoE2 is a bit different. And I think one of the hardest ones actually there, just to kind of change the topic slightly, is that we've had a really hard time zeroing in on what should comboing give you as far as an increase to power versus not doing it. And the reason why this is so hard is because it needs to be high enough that people are incentivized to do it. And like that number has to be surprisingly high to even make it worthwhile. Because like generally speaking, like people aren't going to wake up for like a 20% increase in power. Like they're like, I'd just rather do one thing if I'm only getting a 20% boost. So you'll notice that one of the themes in the video was that, and maybe we didn't dwell on it long enough, but like, we're increasing the bonuses of all of those kind of comboing type things quite a lot in this patch. And that even comes to the core stuff like chill and shock and ignite. All of that stuff is changing quite a bit. Like, so ignite, for example, it's now, okay, I don't think we changed the base ignite, but we made it so that all the skills that are designed for ignite have bonuses to duration, so that they actually, like, you're more likely to combo them with other things because the amount of time that the ignite lasts for is so much longer. And with shock, for example, the shocking skills that are intended to be used with shock, all of them now have magnitude increases. So there'll often be plus 50% effective shock on anything that you're sort of intended to be used that way. And we've also made shock last twice as long. So it's like now you've actually got something where like, you actually would want to use that. And so there's kind of that theme going throughout. And effectively what I'd say is now is we're trying to zero in on a new standard for what a combo should give you. But at the same time, we have to be really careful, because if the effect of comboing is too high, then that means new players can get screwed, because if they're not doing that, they're just having a really tough time, right? Like, it's like if the effect of comboing versus not comboing is 300%, then someone who is not doing that is now taking 3 times longer to kill a boss, which might feel like a slog. So yeah, like that's been a really hard one to nail down. And I think we were also a bit inconsistent through the game of like how much combos are worth for different things. Now, I will say that we're sort of standardizing on a slightly higher value, but then also trying to add more combos in so that they're more obvious. And that what I'm hoping with that, what we'll get is like a lot better of a system where you get to feel that power. And so then when you look at like the Sork, for example, we've got all these infusions. Like, all those infusions are giving pretty damn big power bonuses to all these effects. Like there's quite a big power boost there if you're using them. But you have to use them, right? Like if you're not going to use them, I think you will have a tougher time. So that's a risk, right? Like a risk that we are having to take. But I think it is important to make things more interesting.
And are you also still facilitating or like envisioning at least these kind of like one button builds where people just blast and have a good time? Basically, I feel like I hear it very often, at least from people in the community, where it's like they sort of like press one button, the screen explodes, and okay, I can understand it, maybe very end game when you're like fully decked out. This is something that you probably are fine with. But this is also something that you would like to have, like maybe as let's say an alternative option for specific builds or specific weapon types or something like that? Do
Well,
you have something built in like that?
So this is a real troubling one, actually. Like, so okay, so my normal answer to this is absolutely that. Yeah, by the time you get to end game, that's fine, right? Like that's always been my answer. Now, for the campaign, it's a little bit trickier because the problem is that most people, it's like why press 2 buttons when 1 button will do. Like if the balance is such that a 1 button build can work, and if that's trivial to do, and then it's just 1 button, like that can be a problem. Now, my personal feeling right now is that like during the campaign, it should be that like using a bit of comboing is required, but then once again, as you get to end game, it is more fine to have that less like to have 1 button for clearing to be more of a thing. But I still want the combat to matter as you go through the game initially. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a tough one though, because like it does depend. There is one extra X factor that I think is interesting to change this, which is that itemization. Like, there's a difference between knowing how to do itemization correctly as a player and not doing it. And I guess what the hope would be is that we can get to a point where, like, if you've played through the game a few times, you understand itemization, so you know what to do during the campaign. You can kind of get your items to a point where you don't necessarily have to do as much to kind of like from an action skill perspective to be able to get through the campaign. Whereas if you don't know how to do that stuff, then it's going to require a little bit more from the action side of things, and I think that can be fine as well if we can get to that point. It sort of does mean though that the item system, there's a level of like like there has to be some ability to express what's the word, like skill basically in terms of how you pick your items. Now, I think there's already some of that, but like there's things like knowing where to get certain items from and things like that like you have to have enough hooks of that through the game to be able to make that work. And then the last thing I also just want to mention is another interesting factor that Sprint has added on is that previously you kind of had to kill. I mean, sure, you could skip monsters, but like it really wasn't that effective to do so. Sprint now does give you the ability to skip combat if you want, because you are going to be faster than the monsters, and that means that if you do get good items and then you're effectively overpowered for the area, you can skip for a while and then not have to kill everything, and that's going to sort of be another factor here of like the degree to which you skip monsters and therefore get a bit underleveled, but make it up with item power. And then that's going to, of course, mean that you might need to combo stuff more in order to be able, if you're going to do that, you might need to then combo stuff more in order to accelerate yourself through the campaign faster. So that is a bit of a complicated way to maybe say nothing, but I guess there's kind of a lot of points I'm making here about like the different elements of what goes into this, and I guess ultimately it's complicated, but I think the dynamic with Sprint actually is going to change things quite a lot. The dynamic with some of the item changes we've made is going to change things a lot. And then, the dynamic with the amount of combo multipliers is going to change things a lot. And I guess we'll just have to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine we're going to see some pretty campaign speedruns very soon.
Yes,
to be honest.
Well, the speedrunning game is going to be very interesting. And so by the way, what I'm hoping will happen is that people don't have to use the like annoying kind of weird sort of slightly exploity movement combo-y things.
Yeah.
And because Sprint will ultimately be faster, so should ideally not necessarily be about that. But so I feel a bit sad that I've killed a bunch of people's time they've spent learning how to do this exact specific little movement thing, but
animation canceling.
Well, I guess the thing is
Yeah.
that Sprint seems to be like a very dangerous tool to use, since you get stunned on the first hit you take, right?
You do, however,
you specifically want it to be something for like out of combat movement, and I think there's actually a very good
yeah.
solution for that, where people like traverse maps that have already cleared.
Yeah.
So
it is, but what I will say is that unless you get really close to the monsters, generally speaking, they're either going to be melee, in which they can't hit you, or projectiles just have a really hard time hitting you when you're moving that fast. So generally speaking, you're pretty safe unless you're like right near the monsters. I think you'll be okay there. Now, obviously, you can get cases where it's like there's a doorway, there's a bunch of monsters there, you're not going to be able to sprint through it. Like you do actually have to kill things in that situation. But generally speaking, yeah, you can. You in an open map, you can sprint past them fairly easily.
When you mentioned
I'm excited to try that.
Oh, go for it.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say, when you mentioned that evasion was the worst defensive mechanic early in the video, I was a little scared that you weren't going to talk about armor at all. But it seems that you guys did settle on a solution, it seems, to buff armor. Wanted to know how you guys settled on what you eventually did, and a follow-up to that modifier elemental damage taken via armor. Is that on just body armor or all types of equipment?
So all types of armor, and it's also
Okay.
on the tree as well. So it's generally available. You'll be able to get it. I am not sure whether you'll be able to get it to 100% easily or not. That's kind of an
Okay.
Andrew question. He'll like
Okay.
know that. But yeah, I mean, effectively the goal is we want you to, with specking to be able to effectively mitigate the downsides that each defense has. Like energy shield didn't really need particularly much here, so we didn't
Mm.
kind of do much for that. Although I think there might be a few changes. But yeah, the big ones are evasion and armor needing things. And so, I mean, I would say there's a meme that armor is the worst defense, like kind of
Mm.
going around in the
Mm.
community a lot, but I actually don't agree with that. Like when we look into
Crit.
that, it's like, yeah, sure, there are issues, but like we believe that the elemental stuff is going to improve that.
Mm.
Yeah, evasion actually, like when we looked at it, it's like no, people really weren't doing full evasion. Like people were always doing some kind of hybrid, like full evasion was kind of like just a death wish. So we needed some kind of way to address that concern. But what we didn't want to have, and this is kind of important, is that in PoE1, it's like suppression is just a defense that everyone uses. It's kind of mandatory for everyone. So something that it was important for us is that it still requires you to have evasion in order to work, so that you didn't have another class just coming in and stealing this mitigation that was intended for the evasion characters. So basing it on the amount of evasion you have, and like effectively not converting, but adding deflect based on your evasion, it means that we've got a situation where the you don't you get to have something this deflect mechanic, but other classes can't effectively use it. So
Right. And
pretty
then
good.
going back to sprint just for a moment, are there cool
Mhm.
ways, any interesting ways to scale it on the tree or with unique items that you guys are adding aside from just movement speed with boots?
I actually don't know. There was a plan for one thing for that, but I don't know whether it actually got in or not. So I can't say for certain whether it was. I know there was a unique, but there's actually, there was quite a lot of uniques that we nearly got across the line, but didn't quite. So it's kind of likely that we'll have like a 031 with a bunch of that stuff that kind of almost made it.
Right.
So we'll see about that.
And
But as I said, I don't know whether that one is in or not. But generally speaking, you don't really need to spec into it because it already makes you pretty fast. Like it's a 50% increase to movement speed.
oh wow,
um yeah, it's pretty fast.
pretty quick. I was gonna say Havoc would love if you could. There was like a unique where you could phase while sprinting or something like that. That'd be pretty crazy.
We'll
That'd be
have to see.
busted.
I'm thinking about whether that one's alright, but yeah.
Yeah,
That would be pretty OP, I think so.
it would.
Okay, I have a few more like smaller questions that I got from like my community and some friends and so on. That kind of just like some rapid fire, like you can just answer that real quick if you don't mind. One is Windows 10 support for how long? Do you have any plans on that? Because I think the Windows 10 support is ending like officially soon.
I don't have any plan to remove support. Honestly, I feel like Windows 11 is harder to support than Windows 10, given all the stupid, annoying scheduler bugs with it. Like, Jesus, that's been a horrible problem. So honestly, like, yeah, I'd rather you run the game on Windows 10 right now.
Okay.
But whatever. Just throw Microsoft under the
Okay,
bus a bit.
and like in general, maybe like game optimization and town performance.
All
I
right,
hear
let's
from
talk
people
about
that they
that.
sometimes like have issues lagging out and stuff like that.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about that stuff. So yes, obviously for Europe, servers is a big topic. We have been getting relentlessly DDoSed for a long time. What I would hope you would notice, though, is in the last few weeks, things are significantly better. And that's because we have been doing a massive program of trying to improve this stuff. So now we've actually dropped a lot of server hosts that previously were just not able to get to resist DDoS attacks enough. Like we're just saying, if you can't do it, we just need to get rid of you. We've added more DDoS protection in front of, like using Cloudflare in front of more stuff. We've been working with servers to do that. One of the things we've also been doing is we've been actually DDoSing ourselves to test that the mitigations are working, which is something we never did before. Actually making sure okay, so sure we got this protection in place, but will it actually work? Let's test it by doing this. We've been it's been a huge program of doing that. So I feel like, here's the thing, right? Like if I say all the problems are fixed, then obviously there'll be some random issue and that will suck. So I can't really promise that everything's better, but what I can say is that every mitigation that we could possibly do is being done. And then for the free weekend, we should really stress test this and have a lot of improvements. And there is, there might be a couple of cases where a server host had to be gotten rid of, even though it's technically the lowest ping for you. Like you're going to have to fall back to an adjacent region or something like that, but because we just literally couldn't get good DDoS protection there. But I don't think people should generally notice that. We've generally been pretty good here. And as I said, the goal is, we just need to fix this problem because we can't have another launch being ruined by this stuff. And then as for engine improvements, there's actually been a complete rewrite of the renderer front end in this version. It's not really a player facing thing because obviously, you know, like that doesn't mean anything to most players. What I will say is this: the game is faster now. We've optimized the general like steady state performance. So what that means is like frame rates are a little bit higher, but more importantly, there's also a bunch of stuttering that's been improved. I'm not going to say completely fixed, but definitely like a lot better. And load times are better as well, which is another good one. You can actually, generally speaking, at least on my machine, like loads between areas are now under 5 seconds. Not the first one. The first one will be a little longer due to having to load your character, but less than 5-second loads between areas is with the new front end. And we've also unlocked a lot of potential for optimization in the future as well. So I think things will get much better in this regard pretty soon, and overall things should be a lot better. Now the risk here, of course, is when you do like giant changes like that and you haven't like, you know, tested them against a giant community, like a full rewrite of the stuff. It's like, who knows what bugs have been introduced. Like I'm sure there'll be a few crashes initially. We'll have a couple of teething things, but yeah, like I have to say that just like from running locally, it's a much better experience as far as all of that stuff is concerned.
Very nice. It sounds very good. So I'm excited to see this. I also had some issues with loading times, for example. So I'm excited to try that out, actually. Troy, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, well, I have a bunch. I wrote down so much. Okay, so just cut me off. So with the new tiers of crafting orbs, how exactly do these work? I know that you said they drop, you know, the normal, greater, perfect, and higher tier areas. Did they drop at the same rate as before? So a perfect orb of perfect orb.
So I'll tell you how it works.
So less. Okay.
Yeah. So the actual theory that we had initially with this is like, okay, you've got so many damn transmutes. Like rather than having like 10 transmutes, I would rather have one transmute that was better than, you know, that was as valuable as the 10 that would have otherwise dropped, you know? Like it's effectively a way to like, I don't want to just be picking up all this garbage all the time. Like give me something better that's gonna work better. And at the same time, what it also does is it means that like one of the things that you get with crafting is like the need to like you know, just effectively do the same thing again and again and again until you get the result you want. We were like, what if we can have it so you do it 10 times less often, but it's 10 times like you have to do it but it's 10 times more powerful, you know? I don't know if the number is actually 10 or not. Like there's an amount that's different, but effectively, like, you know, this was the idea. So then we sort of looked at all the different currencies and we kind of said, okay, like, you know, at high levels, it's different for each currency when this kicks in. What we start to do is we start to say, okay, a percentage of the transmutes you would have gotten, and it's not actually implemented this way, but you can imagine it like this, and now being like stored up almost as like transmute juice that then drops as like a stronger transmute instead. And as I said, it doesn't actually work that way, but you can effectively imagine it like that. And but what we did is we said, okay, what's still important is that you get enough base currency still so that you can at least craft your maps. Because obviously you're not going to waste like a higher tier transmute on on a map, right? It doesn't make sense to do that. So therefore, you know, you still do drop occasionally the lower level ones, but ideally it's only like just enough to do map crafting. And then mostly then less often you're getting the ones that are like more powerful, that are more chase. Now the ones for Chaos Orb and Exalt are pretty rare. Like those are very, very powerful effects. So those two are like kind of rare. Like I know the Chaos one, I think Chaos might even be rarer than Divine. I like Perfect Chaos, that is. So like the Perfect Chaos. Chaos is the really, really dangerous one. So like you know, that was it. I can't quite remember what the where the Perfect Exalt is, but I think it's more common than Divine. But yeah, I have to check again. But effectively, like these ones are sort of designed to be like, you know, like those two are like very chase, but then, as I said, throughout endgame, you just won't get as much crap anymore. You'll get more useful things. And so that one is also interesting because there wasn't really like a mid. There was kind of this thing where like exalts were like, I don't remember the exalt divine ratio was. It was like 2000 to 1 or something. It was like some crazy
1 to 2000. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so we're kind of like, there's no like sort of mid currency somewhere between. I mean, I guess you got chaos, right? But like there was like not like enough middle ground currency there. So we kind of wanted to introduce stuff like that as well. Now, one thing you can do if you want is like if we're too aggressive with converting to the higher tier ones, you can down convert them, so you can turn a tier 2 transmute into more multiple T1 transmutes.
How about the
just
opposite?
in case you run out of them. So
how about the opposite, Jonathan? Can you?
Can't do the opposite. Can't do the opposite. Can't go up. That would be too easy, I think. And it would kind of mean that we didn't get to control the drop rate so much. So yeah, that's what we did there. So I think that it's going to be an interesting system. And one of the other things it does mean is that you kind of get the same power as what the ground items get in terms of the mod tiering. So when you see like a T5 magic, Using a perfect transmute is giving you the same like benefit as what a T5 magic would be giving you in terms of the rolls, except you're getting it in crafting. So yeah, that's kind of useful. It looks like we
Wait, you're
lost
here.
Wudijo there.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
but I'm here, so all good.
brief black screen. And then following up
Okay.
on crafting, there's one other cool crafting system that seems to be implemented alongside all these additions in the old systems like Essences, and that is Abyssal crafting.
Right.
And
Yes.
it looks very familiar to a Path of Exile 1 player.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, do we need to make the journey to the depths every time we would like to do a craft? And how
You do. That is a thing.
it
That
is?
is that's something that was brought up. Like I think you probably won't need to do it so often that it's a big
Okay.
issue. But bear in mind that the it's just an area you can go to, right? Like
Always
just on
available.
the map, you go there, you're right at the pit. Like it's not like a big like having to do combat or anything. You just you once you've unlocked it, you can just go there easily.
It's like a hideout area, so it's as if we had, like June in our
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hideout in PoE1, but we just have to go to
Yeah,
the
I mean,
area.
it is a load. Like you have to go to
Right.
like a separate area, but there's a on the waypoint screen. There's a button. You just go there, and then you're there.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Interesting. And this is not just a league mechanic. This is going to be implemented into the core game permanently, or because I wanted to make
that is
sure.
the that's the goal. I mean, obviously, whenever we add new leagues, the plan is, like, and have it later on. But of course, in the league version, right, you're finding an abyss every area, and then of course that means you're going to get more of the crafting currency way more often. Whereas when it's integrated as a league, I would imagine there'll be less of them. Like therefore we'll screw around with the drop rates and everything to make it work. But effectively, like it'll you won't be doing this type of crafting as much once once it turns into an evergreen mechanic. Or at least that's what I would imagine. But it always comes down to like how it actually plays, like what we think. And the big benefit of leagues, of course, is we get to test things and then adjust them when we actually integrate them.
And with this league, there's also something really interesting going on that I don't think is happened in Path of Exile 1. There's an intentional mixing of mechanics, rogue exiles and the crack, bosses and the crack. All these different things are molding together.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually, organic in Path of Exile 1.
Right.
You're going to juice your maps and then implement certain other leagues in them and everything. Was that an intentional like design choice? Is that something you're going to try to do more in PoE2, or did you just see the opportunity here with Abyss?
I like to do this a lot. Like I'm a huge fan of making it so that the things combine together so that you get more interesting outcomes. And it was honestly just a lot of fun designing those. Like, hey, what would happen if this was there? What would happen if that was there? Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's just it's a fun one. I try to do that for even for other leagues as well, but we haven't necessarily done it as well as I think we've done it in this one. Like one of the changes that one of the things I wanted to have happen in the Ismeri and Wisp mechanic, for example, was that it would go to bosses. And we actually, I believe that is getting in this time, by the way. So Wisps will be able to inhabit map bosses. And then, so it's like, and all these things can come together. Wisps can also go down the pit. And then they inhabit, then all the monsters that come out are affected by them. There's things like that as well. Like, I really like all these little interesting mechanic combinations like that. So, yeah, they're just cool little things.
Yeah, allows for more interesting outcomes. 100%.
Yeah, and then you've also think like, okay, what would the reward be if this happened and that kind of stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's cool.
Yeah, Woody, are you
just
back?
real quick, so this question did I miss because my laptop did not like this, so I just completely crashed. So sorry about that. You don't have to give me the answer again.
I probably need to get out of here pretty soon anyway. So, if you've got a couple more questions, I can answer them, but you probably wrap it up pretty soon.
Anything else, Woody?
Let me just check my notes real quick. Yeah, it's just maybe like one last question about like the release schedule one more time, since you mentioned that you're gonna have like the the 2-month cadence with PoE1 and PoE2, and you want to have these 4-month cycles per game. But it looks more like the 5-month side right now. You kind of like really stretched it. I feel.
This one did go a little bit further, but look, we're not going to get out of the correct month. Like basically, what it means is that the PoE1 one is still going to come in at the same schedule that we intended, and we certainly don't want to
be on even months basically every time is the goal.
Yeah, exactly. So like that's important. It's just that this one, like, my goodness, getting an act in is certainly a challenge with the number of bosses and everything. And it's also very hard to cut things as well when it comes to an act, because like you have to have a sort of minimum for it to work. So that was the challenge. But yeah, certainly the months should be the exact month. So 4 months by looking at the calendar months from here, we should so yeah, December, right? Like in December, you'll get a PoE2 expansion after this. And we'll
Okay.
make sure of that.
Yeah, that's good to know, because I think there were like some sentiments where it's like, okay, can GG actually deliver this? And they seem very confident, and now it's already like the first release basically that comes after this announcement, and it's like, oh, yeah,
It
like,
was to be fair, like, well, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I know it's a tough one, but hopefully there's enough
but
content that people
it's a
will
good
at least be able to
commitment,
do
I
that.
think. So this is, I think this also gives like some kind of like structure for the players. They know what's
Right.
coming
Yeah,
roughly,
yeah,
at
for sure.
least, and I think that's pretty important.
Sure. Right.
Okay.
Any last question for you?
Yeah, I have one last question. It's super simple. It has to do with trade. Looks great. I'm really excited for it. You said you can peruse the wares of the shop of the person you're buying an item from after, and even purchase items from that person, I believe. Yeah. Is there I saw there wasn't a confirmation window for the first item. Are there confirmation windows for second items in case you accidentally click something and then you just automatically purchase it? I'm really curious because I know that I do that.
It wasn't a thing that we'd consider, to be honest. I'm
Oh.
pretty sure you have to pick them up and put them down, or you can control click them. So
Control
like
click.
so yeah. So like it sort of works that way. So effectively, that's what you're going to be doing. But you
I'll
know
be
what it
careful.
effectively is? The interface for it, as a buyer, is effectively a shop, right? Like that's ultimately what it looks like. Yeah, that's we're good. I'm really excited for the trade system. By the way, we didn't really talk about it here, but that's going to be a really big one, I'm sure.
It is. Do you guys have any plans to bring it in game, or are you good with it being outside still on the trade
I
site?
do want to bring it in game.
Okay.
We actually have a prototype of this even.
Oh.
But it didn't quite make it for 030. Yeah, the plan is to do that. Now, what I will say is that for me personally, I'm always going to be a website user, because honestly, I find just the browser experience of using that to be better, quite frankly. Like in game, the main thing you get in game is, of course, discoverability. If you're a new user, it's right there that you get that kind of stuff. And but I think the browser experience is ultimately, in terms of like the number of options you've got, and like just like you can save a search easily and all that sort of stuff, just by copying a URL. That kind of stuff is just like is I think makes that good. But yes, we do want to do it in game as well, because people are very keen for that. So yeah, we'll get to that. It's worth mentioning that the website experience, like when you click the button, like your in-game character will travel, like in game. So effectively, like it's already sort of linked together in that way. And that means that if you're a console user, like if you're on your phone and you're like browsing through items, and then you click the button, like on your console, your character will go to the shop, and then you're there, right? So actually, that experience on console, like, it's actually nicer to type on your phone to search for stuff than it is to type on a controller, right? So like I actually believe that the website experience is the way to go. But that being said, as I said, lots of people demanding in games, so we wanted to do that. We just didn't quite make it for 030.
Okay. Think of the MTX option for your shopkeeper too, like for future supporter packs.
Well, I'll tell you one MTX that I thought of, and I'm not sure whether it's getting in for this expansion or not, but I was really excited for this one, because it's like, okay, people are going to be coming to your hideout now, right? There's going to be a place in your hideout where all those like random plebeians are going to be arriving. So we're like, okay, what we really need is a bouncer NPC who's like, yeah, here's the place where the party members and friends can come in. It's like, yeah, you're allowed, you come in, and all of the guys just coming here to trade, you can stay in the public zone. So I'm hoping we'll get that micro in for so you can use that. But that'll be fun.
I have to say, this is such a GGG idea. But it's great.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. And it was nice to meet you, Woody. I've never talked to you before, but nice to meet you.
Yeah, sure. It was nice meeting you. So I mean, I've seen some of your like other like podcasts and stuff here and there. I had some snippets. That it was nice meeting you. Thank you, Jonathan, for the time. That was very insightful. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the next league. So it's gonna be fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much. See you guys in game, I guess.